All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV. I'm the editor here at MetaStellar, and I'm a real person, not an AI. And are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through this weekend? We've got them. Today we have a deadly plague, a sexy alien, and the top book is a space opera with a kick-ass female lead and a creepy alien menace. But before we get to that, I want to thank reviews editor Kristen Nolan and community members E.S. Foster and TERRI Wells for helping us out with the reviews. And Emma and TERRI are here with us today. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. I want to remind everybody to get the books while they're still free. Today is March 29th, and I cannot guarantee how long they will stay free because authors and publishers make them free as a short-term promotion. If you're watching this on a later date, you might still find your next favorite read, and it might also be in Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is where you pay $12 a month and you read all the books you want. So excellent deal. If you don't want to miss any of these free Fridays, subscribe to our newsletter or subscribe to this channel. Link to the newsletter is in the description box below, because every single Friday, our team reads the first few chapters of the books on the top of Amazon's free sci-fi and fantasy list. The link to the article and to all the books is in the description box below. For those who are new, MetaStellar is an online magazine of speculative fiction. All the content is always free to our readers. We publish original short fiction, reprints, excerpts, essays, and lots of book reviews. And we're able to do this and keep all the content completely free thanks to our Patreon supporters. Oh, and also we're in the middle of our March submission cycle, which ends on March 31st. So if you are a short story writer and you have a sci-fi, fantasy, or horror short story, you only have a couple of more days left to submit it. We do pay 8 cents a word, and your story will get included in our next anthology. Our second-year anthology is out. Our first-year anthology is out. We're working on anthology of year 3, and TERRI and Emma are also helping edit that anthology. So thanks, guys. You are awesome. Okay, and you can also buy those anthologies. The links are in the description box below. And let's get to the books. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. And book number 5 on today's list was The Murder Plague by Scott Michael Powers, a standalone dystopian thriller, and it's the author's first time on our Free Friday list. And I read this one, and it's about a terrible plague sweeping the world. I am not a fan of books about terrible plagues sweeping the world because I want my escapist reading to be a tad bit more escapist. Thank you very much. So keeping in mind that I'm not the target reader here, let's get into it. So there's a guy named Guy who lives in Florida, and he is standing across the street from an open market. He's hungry. He wants to buy some veggies. He's armed, as is everyone else there, because this is Florida. No, wait. It's because we're in a dystopian future. At the market, he buys some vegetables, he buys a chicken, he pays cash like people do nowadays because this is a dystopian future. And then an older man, 10 yards away, pulls out an Uzi and sprays bullets into the crowd of shoppers. Guy is shot in his thigh, and a dozen or so other people are hit before somebody else takes the shooter down. And minutes later, the first responders arrive. And they are 2 police officers, and one of the cops kneels down to help a victim, and the other cop shoots the first cop in the head and then starts shooting other people. So everyone who could run has already run away, so the cop is shooting the wounded people who are still there. And the bad cop is about to shoot Guy when Guy shoots him first. And there were sirens in the background of more first responders coming to the scene, but they fade away. The first responders decided they didn't want to respond to this mess. And Guy wraps a handmade tourniquet around his leg, stumbles away. About a block away, he can't walk anymore, uses his smartphone to call for an Uber. Okay, so they still exist. Then in the next chapter, we jump backwards in time 6 months, and we find out how things got as bad as they did. So we meet May, who's a scientist researching viruses, and after work, she's going to a nightclub with her friends. But before she leaves work, her boss accidentally breaks a seal on a genetically engineered virus. And he does it in a room where she's going to be working. He doesn't tell anybody. She's infected. He's infected. She goes to the nightclub. He goes to a conference in Chicago. And he doesn't tell anybody because he thinks, oh, what are the odds that things are going to go wrong? And if I speak up, I'm going to get fired. So, so that's the premise. Apparently, there's some kind of virus, and it seems to make people irrationally aggressive and violent. Again, hitting a little too close to home for me. But other than that, the story is very readable. There's a reason it's on this list. Will I be sticking with it? No. Like I said, it hits a bit too close to home. But I think other people who are into stories about plagues, and there's a lot of them, might be interested. But I am curious about Guy. Did he survive the shooting? And what's going to happen? How is all this going to work out? I am kind of curious. I might check back in. All right, book number 4 on today's list is Song of the 100-Year Summer by Shaylin Gandhi, a standalone fantasy romance novella, and it's the author's first time on our Free Friday list. And E.S. Foster read this for us. Emma, what did you think of this book?
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting because I've never reviewed a novella before, so it was cool to get this little tiny read here. But the story opens with this young girl named Naya, and she lives outside of a village. It's this typical like fairy tale-esque world because the synopsis tells you right away that this is another version of the Beauty and the Beast story. So immediately we dive in. I kind of know what the story's about, but then the first line kind of gives away that there's a strange magic that's been cast over the village because it talks about how it's only been summertime for about 97 years. So there's no winter, no spring, no nothing. And the village is just kind of stuck like this. And I don't really know how they're going to handle it, but I got to keep reading to find out. So the area, it's experienced the summer, but Naya doesn't seem to have a problem with that. Instead, she's more focused on the fact that she doesn't get to go to the village that often. She doesn't really get to have adventures. She dreams of being swept off her feet by a handsome prince. And that's actually like where the story really starts. Her mom comes in and she says that it's trading day at the village. And for the first time in who knows how long, Naya gets to go with her. And immediately Naya is like, oh, I hope I can find, a handsome prince in the village. Like, cause yeah, that's where princes are, and you just walk out of the house one day and it'll magically appear because that's how that works.
Oh.
So before they leave, however, Naya's mother says that she needs to cover her face completely, and this is to keep what's called the butterflies away. And I wasn't really sure what that was, but it seems to me that Naya possesses some sort of magic. It's not like evil magic or anything, but it's something that the villagers are very wary of. So she's a bit of an outcast, and that's why she doesn't get to go to the village that often. So the village is about to approach 100 years of summer because we're already the 97th year, but eventually Naya is going to realize that there's a powerful monster behind these stagnant seasons. It's up to her to break the curse. So I kind of already knew how the story was going to end because it's a version of Beauty and the Beast. So I was like, okay, well, this is probably still something that could have a few cool twists and turns in it. There were a few details that I was confused by because the synopsis made it sound like that the Curse of Summer had just happened or it was about to happen. And maybe that was like why Naya's considered an outcast. Maybe they thought that it was her fault because of the whole magic thing that she supposedly has. But the story starts 97 years in. So when I first started, I was like, okay, this is a little confusing, but I'll continue to read on. And another thing I thought was that the first line and like the opening paragraphs kind of gave away the story. Because the first line was like in the 97th year of summer, Naya found her prince. It's basically the first line. I said, well, that kind of gives away the story, don't you think? Like, even though it's a novella and it's a well-known fairy tale, you could like do a quick read of it. I kind of wanted to figure out the story a bit more for myself. So I personally don't think I would continue with this, but if you really enjoy like fantasy romance and you want to like crank something out really quick over the weekend, I would also recommend this.
All right, thank you. And next, book number 3. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys so you can see that. Sinful Mate by Trish Heinrich. The first of 3 books in Infinite Unions, Intrepid Alien Mates, a sci-fi romance series. The other books are $5 each, and they're in Kindle Unlimited. This is the author's first time on our list, and Terry read this for us. And Terry, you're wearing a Star Trek uniform, right?
Yep. Because the author, like me, is a fan of Star Trek. And I found that out because I read the intros and the other front material to books before diving into the main story. Boy, was I glad I did. Heinrich's author's note calls BS on the idea that if you're into sci-fi romance, you must be a fan of sci-fi or romance, but not both. Ha ha. She also included an alien species quick guide to briefly describe the physical, cultural, and psychological characteristics of the 7 species she has in her story. Like the author, I've been a Star Trek fan since the original series, so I had fun figuring out which of her aliens stood for which Star Trek aliens. Now, they aren't nearly exact stand-ins, though. She's infused them with her own creative alchemy. So the story proper starts from Kieran's point of view. Newly assigned to the Galactic Union of Planets flagship, the Intrepid, he's the only Atavarian on the ship. And at this moment, he's going through a painful ordeal, a cocktail party. Yes, Kieran is Heinrich's Spock stand-in, but he's a Spock with red skin, horns, green eyes, curly hair, and a physiological need to consume blood. Being a logical people, albeit with a violent past, Atavarians are now vegan and consume synthetic blood, which doesn't always react well with Kira's half-human physiology. So while trying to escape this ordeal, this party, Kira bumps into Nurse Chloe Carter, literally. He spills his drink on her, but she takes it in good humor. Realizing what Kira was trying to do, she leads him to an area of the ship where they can get the absolute best view of the nebula they're cruising through. While gazing at the stars and the swirling, colorful effects from the nebula, Kira finds he can relax his guard a little around Chloe. They talk about how their parents influenced them, and Kira learns that Chloe is perceptive, empathetic, and has a first-rate mind. She's not a doctor yet, but has earned several challenging medical certifications, including 3 out of 6 possible in the biology of different non-human species. What we're seeing, dear readers, is the start of a beautiful friendship. Chapter 2 picks up 2 years later and is told from Chloe's point of view. The Intrepid is rendering aid to a colony world on the outskirts of the Galactic Union of Planets. The colony hasn't received a supply ship in 6 months, and the colonists are fighting some seriously aggressive bacterial infections. Chloe is overworked and emotionally wrought, but can't show it. She's lost 2 colonists to infections this morning and is likely to lose a 3rd before sundown, and she feels these things very deeply. Kira expresses his concern for her. He convinces her to take a break and go back to the ship. Well, without giving too much away, they make a brief accidental telepathic connection and then pull back. That's where it sits at the end of chapter 2. Do I need to say that it does start heating up eventually? And that's not the only way it heats up. There are space battles, at least one. Heinrich totally gets Spock. She makes Chloe, our Nurse Chapel stand-in, intelligent, highly competent, perceptive, and empathetic without turning her into a Mary Sue. You're rooting for both characters, including Kira, who's sort of like a fish out of water, wherever he goes. The science fiction and alien species elements feel very true to Star Trek without being carbon copies. The banter I've seen between Kieran and Chloe is delightful, which is great because we all know that it's the characters that drive the story, whatever you're reading. I've never been one to ship Spock and Chapel, but I plan to set aside some time this weekend to boldly go where I've never gone before. Fans of Star Trek will love this book, especially fans of the Spock-Chapel ship. Folks who like where the Spock and Chapel characters get together romantically. Also, from the first 2 chapters, I think it might make a good first read for those who like either sci-fi or romance, but aren't convinced that the 2 go together well. This book could change your mind.
All right, thanks. So moving on to book number 2 on today's list, Let me make that a little bigger for you guys. The Compound by E.K. Francis, the first of 2 books in the Compound series, a young adult dystopian series. Book 2 is not out yet, but it's available for pre-order, and it's the author's first time on our Free Friday list. Kristen Noland read this book for us, but she's not here. So, Terry, you're going to be telling us what Kristen thought.
Yes. So Kristen observes there are monsters in the forest in the dark. Stories of the frightening monsters that few have seen have been told for as long as Alex can remember. And a truck comes around once a year and takes all the teenagers from the compound. As the stories say, the children are killed and eaten by the monsters, but no one really knows. They only know the kids do not return. The story starts off promisingly with Alex, her friends, and her brothers out in the evening trying to get home before darkness falls and the compound doors lock them safely inside. They all make it across a raging river, but Alex's brother breaks his leg when he lands. After a night of storms, Alex awakens alone in the shelter. Her whole family is gone. She finds them outside, standing over the corpse of one of the monsters. All of her family, that is, except her brother that broke his leg. Not long after, Alex hears a gunshot and suspects the men that patrol the compound have killed her brother. So Kristen observes that the book is decently written in the first-person present tense, but she did have a problem with a few world-building elements. In the first few chapters, she notes there are errors in the world building. If a truck comes around and takes all the teenagers every year after the first year, the only children that could be taken are the ones that turn 13. Well, you could argue that these 13-year-olds are all the teenagers. The way the author explains this in the story doesn't make sense, according to Kirsten. It said that it said that the monsters cut chunks out of them, tear the kids' limbs off, and burn them before they are eaten alive. Honestly, the blood loss from cutting their limbs off would kill them in minutes. Well, it's true. So Chris,
I shouldn't be laughing at his limbs being torn off.
Sorry. She noted that as an editor, these inconsistencies bothered her. I can certainly see why. They should have been caught by the author or an editor. This and the grammatical errors made her believe the author didn't get the book edited by a professional before it was published. And she noted that because of her issues with the world building and grammar mistakes, she would not be finishing the books. But fans of the Hunger Games, The Maze Runner, and Divergent may enjoy this novel.
All right. Okay. Now, before we get to book number 1 in today's list, I want to thank our sponsors. Our Patreon supporters. We would not be here without them. Thank you so much. And a thank you to everyone who's bought one of our little MetaStellar mugs, which helps support the publication as well. We are all volunteers. Every editor at MetaStellar does not get paid for this. All the money we raise goes to pay for original fiction. So please support us if you can through the Patreon or through the merch. We have a link in the description box below. Now on to book number 1 on today's list. Let me make that a little bit, book number 1, I said. There we go. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. So this is the Galtha Chronicles by J.J. Green, and it's a box set of the first 3 books of the 10-book Shadows of the Void space opera series. The other books are 99 cents each, except for the last book, which is $2.99. They are not on Kindle Unlimited, but with a price that low, it's not a big deal. The author has been on our Free Friday list before. So I read this one because I love space operas. It's my favorite genre. And this book promises to have a kick-ass heroine fighting aliens, which I love. And space operas with strong female leads are pretty much my all-time favorite books. And this particular protagonist's name is Jas Harrington, which reminds me of one of my favorite series, the Honor Harrington saga by David Weber, but there's probably no relation. So, like Honor, Jas is also does like space military stuff, but unlike Honor, she serves as chief security officer for a corporation, not for a state's military. And the unit under her command isn't human; it's all emotionless robots. So as a side note, sci-fi authors, please pay attention to what's going on in AI right now, because the latest AIs can and do show emotion. They can tell jokes, mostly bad jokes, but they can recognize and respond to human feelings. It's super creepy, but yeah, the technology is already there. But anyway, back to the book. So Jess is on a new planet, looking for signs of life. If she does not find any signs of life, the planet's resources are up for grabs to the first corporation that gets there, and her bosses want to grab those resources. And she and her robots find some weird structures that she thinks were made by intelligent aliens. But there's a small chance they're natural. But other than that, she doesn't find any signs of animal life. So she refuses to sign off on the planet being safe for exploration because she's got a weird feeling about this. She can't point to anything specific, but she thinks that those structures are artificial and that there might be danger on this planet. She's overruled, she's restricted to her quarters, and while she's locked up in her room, a team of geologists heads down to the planet's surface, does some geology work, comes back to the ship, and then things start getting pretty weird. I'm definitely getting into this book. We'll probably finish it this weekend, and I'll let you guys know next week if I go on and read the rest of the series. All right, so that was it for today's Free Friday list. If you don't want to miss any of them, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, would very much appreciate it, and check out the website, metastellar.com. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Terry, for joining me today, and I'll see you guys next Friday. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.